we all know Necromancer is insanely strong in Diablo 4, but the latest patch buffed it even more. And in that regard, I have good news for you, very good news, and then sadly bad news as well, because there is something still broken. We're talking about the Heart of the Great Feast, and it can do two things. Either all your minions deal up to 100% finally multiplicative bonus damage, not additive anymore. No, all the damage they deal get multiplied by 100%. Or if you have no minions, all your damage gets multiplied by 100%. Now let's compare that to the Creeping Death, for example. The Creeping Death does 47% to your damage over time effects, like Blight and Shadow Corpse Explosion, and stacks for every crowd control effect you have. Chill, Slow, Stun, 3. But it's only your damage over time effects, while the Great Feast does 100% to everything. Now there's 3 builds that come into my mind. Minions, a Golem maximum damage solo build, because technically with 100% damage plus, the Golem should be able to do millions of damage with his ability. Or the Infinimist build / Tempest Storm build that's currently using the Barber Heart, which is nice. But if I could deal 100% multiplied damage on whatever I'm dealing right now, that could be quite nice. Because instead of stacking my crits up into the Barber Heart, all my crits do 100% multiplied more damage. Disclaimer, I tried full minions with Heart of the Great Feast. That one you can put in the trash. Because if the base damage of a minion is 1000, and even if you multiply 1000 by 40% and 100% and 20% and 30% and 40% and 60%, it's still so extremely low. The base damage of minions stings. But what about Golem now? There's good and bad news for that. Because yes, we tried a Blood Golem and you can get the damage really high. I saw up to 280,000 crits with the Golem ability. But I also learned an extremely interesting thing about the Golem. We're taking the Blood Golem here, which has 11,000 base damage. And now you would think if I put on the Heart of the Great Feast with 90% bonus damage, that this would get higher. No, it doesn't. Also here in the tooltip, it doesn't get higher. Now there's an interesting thing. The Heart of the Great Feast says if I have no minions, the bonus applies to me, right? So what happens now if I move the Golem out of my bar? Suddenly the Golem does 21,000 damage, 90% more. Which means the Golem works exactly like the Ring of Mendon. You are actually not boosting the Golem's damage, you have to boost your own damage, which makes everything you can do Golem-wise useless. Yes, we're talking about having the Paragon board with 40% increased damage, plus 34% Golem damage, plus 34% Golem damage. This adds absolutely minimal to the Golem damage itself, but not to the big bada boom he's doing. Because if that would be the fact, we had a 90% increase, a 40% increase, a 50% increase while he's healthy, and all these amazing things coming together, and he should go nuts. But as it turns out, the Golem actually scales with my Shadowblight key passive stacking. If I get 120% damage plus, the Golem gets 120% damage plus. If I eat 5 corpses, it also gets 40% multiplicative damage. So the Golem is extremely bugged. Which is the sad news here. The build does work, but there's something even better to do with the Great Feast now, and something else I learned about the Golem, which is really interesting. Sacrificing the Golem gives us an increase of 30% multiplicative critical strike damage. That's insane. We all know this. And it brings me up to 332, something that often gets forgotten. If we now add Grasping Veins to it, that's another 60% multiplicative bonus critical strike damage. I'm sorry for the math, but whipping out my calculator, that's 332 times 1.6. Again, right? That brings us to 531. That's amazing. But we also have the Essence Glyph, which gives us another 22% on non-healthy enemies. So that's times another 1.22, which brings us to 648. And now to top that off, if you're actually pairing your sacrifice bonuses, and we're talking about your sacrifice bonuses are increased by 35%, but it would mean that the Golem goes from 30 to 40%. And that in total is only 10% more. But having 10% more on this whole shebang here brings us up to 712% in total. So 10% more in the grand scheme of things is actually almost 70% more damage. And now that is all your damage being multiplied by 712% on a critical strike. Closing the circle, now we could get a 100% multiplicative damage bonus on all our damage. Is that actually better than the Barber Heart? Let's take this for a spin through a tier 100 dungeon, but also look at how useless the Golem is. Not only does it scale with your damage, also sacrificing it is so vastly better. Because if you don't sacrifice it, you're missing out on 200% critical strike damage. That's what 30% difference is on the Golem, multiplying your damage. 200% in total. That's mental. Like, you have to sacrifice the Golem. You have to. There's no reason to ever play it, sadly. I'm going for the Tempest Necromancer, which is Infinity Mist, only that it has the Lidless Wall. Links to both builds are in the description below, with all the abilities and Paragon board happening, because the Paragon board is quite something to behold. But how does our 90% bonus damage do in dungeons now? Over the Barber Heart, we get a Serrath's Lair with Blood Blister. Let's see. Now with the Barber Heart, we're obviously able to do tremendous banger damages left and right. But what is it now if all our crits are just finally going out instead of, you know, having to be stored into someone? What kind of damage are we going to see? I mean, this is like 300Ks instead of millions of crits. We're gonna activate our shields. We're gonna go into these elites. I mean, we're very tanky because that's the main idea behind this build, to be extremely tanky. And there's one thing we definitely notice, and that is not these cascading damage effect that the Barber Heart obviously provides. But all in all, our damage is very high, especially as soon as we trigger the, you know, Corpse General, because that's where the big multiplier comes in. But I will have to say straight up, already noticeable, that the Barber Heart has one advantage that 100% damage can't hold up with. Because yes, your individual crits are higher and they're amazing, but the Barber Heart turns everyone into a bomb. And it doesn't only turn everyone into a bomb, it turns everyone into a bomb and then the friend as well. Because if you Barber Heart one opponent and that opponent explodes, but his friend is also Barber Hearted, so he's still ticking down 3 seconds, then the damage that the first guy deals will go into the other guy as well. So he explodes for 1,000,000, then explodes into the next guy, then explodes into the next guy, then explodes into the next guy. And that creates this amazing cascading damage effect that, especially on bigger mob packs, really leads to the devastation that the Barber Heart can do. Now, I will say that the new heart, or that the fixed heart, is definitely an option, as it just does good damage. And I will say it's more damage than the Creeping Death in total. So you can 100% use it to farm Nightmare Dungeons and to get more Wrathful Invokers, because they're dropping like M&Ms, right? Left and right. It's quite the surprise how well it actually does. And yes, we're really destroying these Jimmies and Timmies here. But you farm Nightmare Dungeons with the Heart of the Great Feast, if you have it already, and then you prepare essentially for just getting your Barber Heart. I mean, end of the day, season 1 is the season of the Barber Heart, the season that makes every single build go boom, boom, zoom, zoom because of the Barber Heart. And that's, I think that's okay. I mean, end of the day, that's your pinnacle content, but you can farm it. So the big difference to some uniques is like the Lidless Wall. There's no way to farm that apart from spamming Nightmare Dungeons, but the Barber Heart will drop. So what did we learn today? Golem needs to be sacrificed. Minion main with the Great Feast is completely useless. The Great Feast is a good alternative, especially as you're leveling up. As you pick it up, try to use it with an Infinity Mist build. It is super good and does the trick. Links in the description below to these builds. Season 1, Season of the Malignant Hearts, Season of the Barber Hearts. Now, if you want to know how the Tempest build performs with a Barber Heart, here's the build. Or you're rather interested in Bloodlands shenanigans, which is going to rework into a full crit Bloodlands as well, check it out.